I'm telling you a story of ancient times and an ancient king. King O'Toole was his name, and he lived long, long ago. While it was he who owned the churches, that's how long ago it was. King O'Toole was a right sort of king. He loved to get up in the morning before the sun and run off to the hills to chase the deer. He did that most days throughout his life until one morning, when he woke up, he noticed his limbs were stiff. But off he went anyway. But then a few weeks after that, his ticker began to bother him. His hunting days in the hills were over. He needed something to entertain him, to give him a bit of diversion. So instead of getting a dog like most people do in their old age, he decided to get a goose. And oh, what a goose she was! And here is how she entertained him. She would fly up to the sky as if she were an eagle, then dive into the lake and catch fish for the king. Oh, I know you're laughing at that, but the king was overjoyed with his girl. One day, however, like all creatures on this earth, the goose began to get old, and she couldn't entertain him or get him the fish for his supper. And this depressed good King O'Toole. One day he was feeling sorry for himself, and he was running around the lake, well, actually walking, and he thought, I'm just gonna jump in the lake and drown myself. But instead of doing that, his attention was diverted by a young man coming round the corner. And so he said, God save you, young man. Well, God save you, King O'Toole, the young man said. Well, that's true enough. I am the prince and penitentiary of this parts, but who are you? How did you know I'm king? 'Cause never saw you around here before. Oh, said Saint Kevin, and that's who it was. It was Saint Kevin in disguise. He says, oh, well, you know, there are things I know. Oh, is that so? Said the king. Well, tell me. You look like a mighty fine boy, but how is it you make your living? Things seem easy for you. Well, said Saint Kevin, you see, my business is fixing things that are old and making them like new. Oh, said the king, you're a tinkerer. Oh, no, said Saint Kevin, I'm not a tinkerer. I'm a little more something than that. By the way, King O'Toole, how's your goose doing? My goose? How did you know about my goose? Well, as I said before, I just know things. Ah, well, what if, says Saint Kevin, what if I could make your goose fly like an eagle again? The king looked startled, said, well, I'd say you were a very clever man if you could do that. Oh, well, what would you give me if I could make your goose fly like the eagles again? Well, I would give you my gratitude, that's for certain. Ah, come on now, if I could make your goose new again, that's all you'd give me? Well, I'd give you whatever you want, said the king. Here's the bargain, said Saint Kevin. I fix your goose, and every bit of land she flies over on her first time up, you give to me. Ah, said the king, I will agree to that. So the king looked behind him to see where his goose had been waddling along, following him slowly. He says to her, and she waddles up. And he pats her head and says, here she is. And Saint Kevin knew from the moment he saw her, he could fix her, so he picked her up by the wings. And he blew air on her, then threw her up and blessed her. And she did fly like the eagles, and the king stood there, his eyes wide open in amazement, as she flew around the lake, then flew over some land, then came back over the lake, did a dive, and caught him a fish. He was astounded. The goose came, flew back to the king, put that fish at his feet. "By golly," he said, "you did it." "Ah, yes," said St. Kavin, "and what have you got to say to me about that?" I say you're a very clever boy." Well, you have something else to say to me, King O'Toole?" "Well, I am eternally grateful, and King, what about the land?" "Well, it's yours." "Ah, that's what I wanted to hear. Yes, indeed. You're a man of your word, King O'Toole." "Well, indeed I am, sir." "Well," said St. Kavin, "I've been in disguise because I wanted to test you." "Test me?" "Yes. Well, what's your disguise?" "Well, you see, I'm St. Kevin." "What?" "Yes, I'm St. Kevin, came down to test you, and I like you, King O'Toole. You give your word, and you keep it." "You mean I've been talking, bargaining with the great St. Kevin?" "Yes, indeed you have." And the king fell to his knees and crossed himself. "Oh my," he said, "indeed, the great St. Kevin and me." St. Kevin was pleased with King O'Toole, and he took care of him in his old age on the land that the king had given him. But then the king passed, and the goose, well, she was one of the creatures of earth, so she too slowly began to grow old as well, and her eyesight dimmed. One day, when she flew over the lake, she took a dive for what she thought was a trout. But it wasn't a trout at all. It was a horse eel, and that horse eel jumped up and grabbed the goose and killed her. But that horse eel didn't eat her, no sir. That horse eel would not eat anything blessed and touched by the great St. Kevin.